You think you know the story of the 300 Spartans? But what if everything you've seen was only half true? This was not just a battle, it was a masterpiece of strategy. The real story isn't about brute force. It's about intelligence, geography, and a plan that changed the course of history. In 480 BC, the Persian Empire, under the command of King Xerxes, assembled an invasion force of unprecedented scale. His goal was absolute, the subjugation of Greece. From the vast plains of Asia, this colossal army marched west, a tide of men and steel that seemed destined to swallow the small divided Greek city-states. The Greeks were outnumbered, out-resourced, and locked in their own rivalries. Yet as the Persian fleet sailed along the coastline and the army advanced on land, the free peoples of Greece knew this was a fight for their very existence. They had to unite or perish. Their defense would not rely on matching Xerxes' numbers, an impossible task. Instead, they would rely on something far more powerful, an intimate knowledge of their homeland, unbreakable discipline, and a strategy centered on a single, crucial location. All arrows on the map of the ancient world pointed to one place, a narrow coastal pass known as Thermopylae, the Hot Gates. This is where the Greeks, led by a small contingent of Spartans, chose to make their stand. It was a calculated decision, a strategic gambit that would pit intelligence against overwhelming might. The stage was set not for a simple clash of armies, but for a brilliant military lesson that would be studied for centuries to come. The secret to the Greek defense wasn't the strength of their soldiers alone. It was the land itself. Thermopylae was a geographical miracle for a defending force. On one side, the sheer impassable cliffs of the Kallidromo Mountains rose into the sky. On the other, the waves of the Malian Gulf crashed against the shore. In between lay a passage so narrow that in some places it was barely 15 meters wide. This natural choke point was the great equalizer. It didn't matter if Xerxes had 200,000 soldiers or 2 million. At Thermopylae, he could only bring a handful to bear at any given moment. The vast Persian army would be forced to funnel into this tiny corridor, its numerical superiority completely nullified. Geography became the ultimate weapon in the Greek arsenal. The Spartans and their allies didn't have to defeat the entire Persian army at once. They only had to defeat the small fraction that could fit into the pass. This allowed a few thousand Greeks to hold off a force many times their size. It was a strategy of patience, of using the terrain to bleed the enemy, to wear down their morale, and to prove that numbers were not the only factor that decided a battle. The wind whistling through the pass and the sound of the sea were not just background noise. They were the sounds of Greece's natural fortress at work. With the location secured, the genius of the Spartan strategy came into play. King Leonidas understood that this would be a battle of endurance. He wasn't planning a glorious, reckless charge. He was orchestrating a disciplined, methodical defense. See, the Greek hoplites, heavily armored and carrying their iconic large round shields, formed a phalanx, a wall of bronze and wood. But this was no static wall. The Spartans implemented a brilliant system of rotation. They fought in short, intense bursts before cycling to the rear to rest, allowing a fresh line of rested soldiers to take their place. This meant the Persian attackers, who had to march and fight continuously, were always facing fresh, determined defenders. It was a relentless, grinding process designed to exhaust the enemy both physically and mentally. This wasn't just about holding a line, it was a chess match against an empire. Leonidas controlled the tempo of the battle, conserving his men's energy while draining the enemy's vast reserves. His commands were precise, his formations adaptable. At one point, the Greeks feigned a retreat, luring the Persians into a disorganized charge, only to turn and reform their impenetrable wall, causing disarray and frustration. Every move was calculated, turning the battlefield into a deadly puzzle that the Persians, for all their power, could not solve. But a strategy is nothing without the leadership to execute it. King Leonidas of Sparta was more than just a warrior king. He was the unifying force that made the defense of Thermopylae possible. In a land of fiercely independent city-states, often at odds with one another, Leonidas forged a fragile but determined alliance. He understood that the threat of Persian tyranny was greater than any local rivalry. His presence at the head of the army, with his 300-strong royal guard, was a powerful symbol. It showed that Sparta, the most formidable military power in Greece, was fully committed to this fight for freedom. His leadership was not about fiery speeches, but about quiet resolve and leading by example. He was in the thick of the planning, his mind as sharp as his spear. The famous phrase attributed to him, "Molon labe," come and take them, spoken in response to the Persian demand to lay down their arms, encapsulates his unshakable spirit. It wasn't a boast, it was a statement of fact, a challenge born of strategic confidence. He knew the ground, he knew his men, and he knew that freedom was a cause worth defending to the last. This unwavering courage inspired the Thespians, Thebans, and other Greeks standing beside him to hold the line with a resolve they might not have found alone. For days, the Greek strategy worked flawlessly. Wave after wave of Persian infantry, including Xerxes' elite immortals, broke against the Spartan-led shield wall. But every great strategy has a potential weakness. For Thermopylae, it was a hidden mountain path, a secret trail that bypassed the main pass. A local man named Ephialtes, seeking reward from the Persian king, revealed its existence. Xerxes immediately dispatched a force to encircle the Greek position. When scouts brought news that the Persians were closing in from behind, the strategic situation had fundamentally changed. The pass was no longer defensible. For Leonidas, this was the moment of ultimate decision. He could have retreated, saving his elite warriors to fight another day. Instead, he made a choice that would seal his legend. He dismissed the bulk of the Greek army, sending them away to warn the rest of Greece and prepare for the battles to come. But he, along with his 300 Spartans and a contingent of brave Thespians and Thebans who chose to stay, would remain. His new objective was no longer to win, but to buy time. His final stand was not an act of desperation, but a calculated sacrifice, a strategic delay to ensure the survival of the Greek resistance. The stand at Thermopylae was never about winning the battle itself, it was about winning the war. By holding the pass for as long as they did, Leonidas and his men gave the Greek city-states precious time to mobilize their armies and, crucially, for the Athenian navy to prepare for the decisive naval battle at Salamis. The courage shown at Thermopylae became a rallying cry for all of Greece, a symbol of defiance against impossible odds. The story that echoed through the ages was not just about the 300, but about the thousands of Greeks who stood together, united by a brilliant plan. Their sacrifice demonstrated that a small, determined force, armed with superior strategy and an unshakable love for freedom, could stand against the world's greatest empire. The legacy of Thermopylae is not a tale of mythic warriors, but a timeless lesson in leadership, unity, and the power of a well-executed strategy. It was not myth, it was mastery. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy diving deep into the real stories behind the legends, be sure to subscribe and join us for more real history documentaries. See you next time.